SLT Speed Up සවාරිය සමගින් සද්දන්ත වාසි රැල්ලක්. අලුත් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සබඳතා සඳහා පළමු මාස දෙක පුරා data double. Speed up with SLT.
Good evening. Tonight, death to drug traffickers. President Maithripala Sirisena stresses that he will not hesitate on implementing the death penalty on drug traffickers. Assuring a better FTA. State Minister says that the Singapore FTA have not taken away the rights of people over trans-boundary movement of hazardous waste. Technology tackling an age-old issue. Higher Education Ministry introduces a mobile phone app to stop ragging incidents at state universities. Prosecuting the hierarchy. Bar Association of Sri Lanka commenced the setting up of special high courts to expedite the corruption-related cases.
Now the judges are going to hear those cases independently.
And in international headlines, trouble brewing. US President Donald Trump's former personal lawyer Paul Manafort pleads guilty to 8 charges concerning fraud and violating campaign finance laws. Live across the nation, this is Sri Lanka's news channel, Derana 24/7. Hello everyone, I'm Mahesh Johnny and welcome to First at 9. Well, President Donald Trump seems to be in the hot seat once again with 2 convictions of his closest aides. We'll have more on that story on our international segment. But first, we begin here at home with researching news of the death penalty. President Maithripala Sirisena highlights that narcotic use and drug trafficking are not concerns isolated to the north but shared across the country. Addressing an event held in Jaffna today, the head of state pledged to implement the death penalty on anyone found guilty of drug trafficking without mercy.
A sum of 400 million rupees is allocated to the reconstruction of Mailadi Fisheries Harbour in Jaffna in an attempt to uplift the fisheries industry in the north. The reconstruction process commenced this morning under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena. The President also engaged in cordial discussions with the fishing community in the area.
මේ රටේ කිසිම ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් බම තරම් යාපනයට උතුරට මීට කලින් ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ.
No president has visited the north as much as I have. 88% of the land occupied by the army are now released. Mailadi School is also one of the properties that were under the army. While MP Mave Senadiraja was delivering his speech, I spoke with the army commander about releasing schools under the army. I would like to tell you that we will surely release all the schools under the army within the next couple of weeks. There are certain issues that affect not just the people of the north. For example, the issue of narcotic usage and drug trafficking. I have stated that death penalty will be given to those who are responsible for drug trafficking. There will be no excuses for them. We will definitely give them the death penalty.
ඉහළම දඬුවම් ඒ අයට දෙනවා මරණීය දණ්ඩනයක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා.
Meanwhile, the president met with journalists yesterday at his official residence during an awareness session on the project to renovate 2,400 rural tanks under the cascaded tank village system. International monetary agencies usually give funds and loans to development projects of the country if they see that there is progress. So we have no problem when it comes to money. That is why I keep talking about developing our traditional ways of development than bringing in large-scale investments from foreign nations. We can only raise ourselves through agriculture.
The visiting Japanese Minister of Defense Sonori Onodira today twirled the Hamad report, which was off limits for media personnel. The visiting minister also visited the Eastern Naval Command in Trincomalee. Minister Onodira is the first ever Japanese Minister of Defense to visit the island.
The visiting Japanese Minister of Defense, Itsunori Onodera, met President Maithripala Sirisena yesterday. According to the President's media division, the 2 parties reviewed the progress of the implementation of agreements entered into during President Sirisena's recent visit to Japan and further discussed the ways to develop defense cooperation between the 2 countries while expanding the relationship between Japan and Sri Lanka. Accordingly, special attention was given to strengthening the defence cooperation encompassing maritime security. As a result of the discussions held between President Maithripala Sirisena and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the Japanese government took measures to provide 2 patrol boats to Sri Lanka Coast Guard at a value of 1.8 billion rupees. Moreover, the visiting Japanese Minister of Defence called on Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Temple Trees last evening. The Japanese minister also engaged in a tour of the Colombo port yesterday.
This year, first half, our growth was the highest growth in the world. Number one growing port in the world is the port of Colombo.
Today, Minister Itsunori Onodera visited the Eastern Naval Command in Trincomalee. The visiting Minister of Defence also engaged in a tour of the vessel Ikasuchi under the command of the Coast Guard. Then, Minister Onodera took part in a tour of the Hambantota port, which was off limits for media personnel.
The Japanese Defence Minister's landmark visit to the country comes in a backdrop where the Hambantota port is given to China on 99 years of lease and a joint venture with India is in the pipeline to operate the Mattala International Airport. Given the culmination of these factors, various fractions express their views on the timing of Minister Itsunori Onodera's visit to the island.
I will also say on this point of Japan. Japan is a country knows about Trincomalee also very well. Even during the Second World War, the Second World War.
The Japanese Defence Minister's landmark visit to the country comes in a backdrop where the Hambantota port is given to China on 99-year lease and a joint venture with India is in the pipeline to operate the Mattala International Airport. Given the culmination of these factors, various factions expressed their views on the timing of Minister Itsunori Onodera's visit to the island.
I will also say on this point of Japan. Japan is a country knows about Trincomalee also very well. Even during the Second World War, the Second World War was conducted from Trincomalee. So for Japan, Hambantota's value is also well known. Now the envoy from Japan is here. They know that trade between Africa and China is booming and Hambantota is in maritime trade lane. And Trincomalee is one of the largest natural harbors in Asia. Everybody should remember, Trincomalee and Hambantota collectively, and as well as Colombo, but especially those two harbors, will become a problem for Singapore, because Singapore has grown as a maritime hub because of Sri Lanka was unable to promote itself as a maritime hub in the 70s, 80s and 90s. Today, we are talking about Singapore wanting free trade agreements. Free trade agreements are used to stifle growth in competitors.
It is also a factor that 60% of the energy needs of East Asia floats past Sri Lanka along one of the busiest sea lanes. And this sea lane has to be protected and must be made available to all countries that seek to use it. And I don't think any country has threatened the security of that sea lane or the right to use that sea lane. So in the circumstances, I'm very happy that the Japanese Defense Minister has visited the port, because this is a port that we should be using much more extensively than we are at the moment.
Today, the Japanese Minister of Defence is in Sri Lanka. We have discussed the Trincomalee master plan with him as to how it can be further developed, and there was no discussion about security.
Professor Venerable Madhaguda Abethisathera is critical of the response attracted by the recent comments of Venerable Dr. Omalpe Sobithathera. Venerable Madhaguda Abethisathera singled out comments by the Prime Minister and Parliamentarian Vimal Weerawansa in particular, saying both were uncalled for and leaders should be more composed in their reactions. Addressing a Buddhist religious event in Galle yesterday, the Thera reiterated that it is unbecoming for members of the clergy to compete with laymen in the political arena.
When members of the clergy were arriving in active politics in recent times, we objected as it's unsuitable for a bhikkhu to compete with laymen in politics. This has led to the degeneration of the power and respect of the clergy, which in turn is drawing ill comments from politicians. Omalpe Sobidithera made a comment recently at the BMRCH, and I witnessed a high-ranking political figure in my vicinity verifying the facts and then moved to highlight the Thera's remarks to be untrue. During such situations, a leader should have composure and use humility in addressing the matter. Both the government and the opposition moved to respond to the Thera's comments, and it was wrong to do that. The Prime Minister also responded, while Vimal Veeravansa said the Thera aided the January 8th revolution and therefore the Thera should endeavour to correct the mistake. No one has the right to continually target and criticise a comment made by a Thera. There is no point in a constitution which does not protect the Buddhist clergy. I don't exactly remember if the President or the Prime Minister said anything like that, but if that is the view of the leaders of the country, how can we expect the religion to be protected? The Buddhist clergy had to enter politics, and it is because of them that the religion was protected so far. We can't expect the leaders to protect religion.
The remains of late Chandra Tudor Rajapaksa was taken to the ancestral homes of the Rajapaksa family in Madamulana this morning. Chandra Tudor Rajapaksa, a younger brother of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, passed away yesterday while receiving medical treatment at the intensive care unit of the Tangol Base Hospital. The funeral of late Chandra Rajapaksa is scheduled to be conducted on the 25th of this month at 2 p.m. at the family cemetery at Madamulana. Meanwhile, Subramaniam Swamy, a senior politician in the Indian Parliament along with Indian Professor Monu Nalapat, also visited Madamulana to pay last respects to late Chandra Rajapaksa. Politicians, intellectuals and friends of the family also arrived in Madamulana to pay their last respects to late Chandra Rajapaksa. The joint opposition claims that large-scale business establishments in the country have seen a downturn of 20% in the first quarter of 2018 financial year. Its member parliamentarian Mahindanand Alutgamagi highlighted the data at a media briefing held in Colombo today, accusing the government of causing the downfall.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry found out that almost 40 UNP parliamentarians have taken money from Aloysius. The commission was appointed, it released its final report, but action is yet to be taken. Can't President Maithripala Sirisena request the Singapore government to hand over Mahendran? It is Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe who is hiding the former central bank governor. The Treasury presented a report to the central bank regarding the current financial status of the country. As per the first quarter of the 2018 financial year, country's main businesses have seen a 20% downturn. John Keel's has seen a 68% downturn, Aitken Spence by 20%, Richard Pearce and Company by 49%, and Hemas Holdings by 20%. Haley's has become a loss-making company. The amount of unpaid debt by financial institutions has risen from 3% to 8%. The country will be destroyed if it reaches 10%. When it comes to Abans, SoftLogic and Singer, all three companies are claiming that their entities are seeing a downturn of 30% compared to last year. As per the estimates of Census and Statistics Department, the construction industry has seen a 16% downturn. The Road Development Authority is lagging behind in paying 25 billion rupees to contractors. Bills worth 1.2 billion rupees are stuck in the Education Ministry of the Central Province owing to the closest school project. All contractors have stopped working because money has not been paid for work done in 2016. What has happened to the heritage sites in the northern and eastern provinces? 1,500 families are being settled in the village of Marathodia, and 450 families out of that don't even have Sri Lankan citizenship. 697 out of 700 acres of land belonging to Muhudu Mahavihara are taken over. Minister of Buddhasasana and other ministers designated to protect heritage sites are all asleep. We can prove this with evidence. Reformed LTTE members say that around 5,000 weapons used by the LTTE have been sent to Islamic State members via extremist Muslims. This is the re-emergence of separatism.
Veteran journalist and author Victor Ivan stresses the need for a change in the political system as the system currently in place prevents meaningful and beneficial changes being made in the country. He made this remark addressing a function held in Colombo yesterday.
දේශපාලකයෝ අපරාධකාරයෝ මතත්
This country has a system where politicians depend on criminals and criminals depend on politicians. This situation has gotten so pathetic that we can't discern between the politician and the criminal. Both of them have become one person. Our society has become numb and we're left with a rotten regime. How can we come out of this? I think neither a future president nor can an armed struggle can change this situation. We can only get relief via a knowledgeable society, discipline and creativity of the people. There is a popular belief that we will be able to elect a good president in 2020. Not a single change can be done by anyone who comes to power using the current political system. Each and every section of the regime, the constitution, the legislature and the judiciary are rotten.
උප්පරිම වශයෙන් කුණු වෙච්ච තැනක.
Also in local news, we have for you tonight refuting sentiments in the political arena that justices of the newly established Permanent High Court at Bar will be influenced by political requests. President of the Bar Association, U.R. De Silva, insists that justices appointed will work independently. He spoke on the topic to First at 9 today while expressing views regarding the Permanent High Court at Bar.
Earlier, the amendment to the Judicature Act was enacted. On that occasion, we were of the view that it is not the proper way to constitute a trial at bar because the Chief Justice's discretionary power was removed, and then there was a special clause to not to allow any dates to be moved with regard to the postponements. Minister has the power to constitute any number of courthouses, and then the other important thing is AG and the Bribery Commissioner's Department has the power to file cases in trial at bar. So we vehemently objected for that, and we went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was given the order to state that the Chief Justice's discretionary power should be there, and then the other clauses were amended. Because of that, Bar Association was very happy, but at the same time, we said that there should not be any political involvement or any political harassment with regard to that. If there is an indictment, all those indictments should be forwarded to the Chief Justice, and Chief Justice is going to take decisions with regard to filing of cases in the trial at bar. And then senior most High Court judges have been appointed. It's an insult to the High Court judges if you say that this is a politically motivated issue, because now the judges are going to hear those cases independently and they are going to consider on merits only.
The Minister of Higher Education has decided to introduce a new mobile phone application with the intention of mitigating the issue of ragging prevalent within the university system. Subject Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said that though this application, students are able to alert the responsible parties and officials of any incidents of ragging or other emergencies.
University students once more took to the streets yesterday over several demands, which include allegations of government's attempts to suppress them. The subject ministry says that during 2015 and 2017, 1,989 students have left universities due to ragging, while around 91,600 students who were selected for state universities left due to sexual and other forms of harassment. The number of deaths directly attributed to ragging stands at 14. In face of this situation, the Ministry of Higher Education has decided to design a mobile phone application to rescue students from being ragged at universities. The new application, called UGC Emergency Safety App, allows university students to inform the inconveniences they have to face in the form of ragging to Vice-Chancellor of their university, disciplinary officers and the University Grants Commission. Minister of Higher Education Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said this application is scheduled to be launched as a pilot project at the Uvavellassa University from the 20th of next month. The app is designed to alert authorities. When a student faces such an incident, they can seek help with the fingerprint recognition technology incorporated into the app. Upon recognizing the fingerprint, the app conveys the fact that the student is in trouble and sends the student's location to the information centre. In turn, the information centre alerts the nearest police station to the incident. In the meantime, the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Lahiru Irasekara, speaking to Derana, said that this is another attempt by the government to suppress students. Although such applications are used for safety of women and children, this is the first time such an app is used for the safety of university students in the world.
Islamic devotees in Sri Lanka today celebrated the festival of Eid al-Adha, which coincides with the final rites of Hajj, joining millions of Muslims worldwide. The festival falls in the month of Dhul Hajj, which is the 12th month in the Islamic lunar calendar.
Eid al-Adha, which in Arabic literally means the festival of the sacrifice, commemorates the story of the Muslim prophet Ibrahim's test of faith. Muslims believe Ibrahim was commanded by God to sacrifice his son Ismail. Tradition holds that God spared the boy, placing a ram in his place. In a world where people wage war against each other based on divisions among them, the festival of Hajj exemplifies the importance of the desire for coexistence among different communities. Hajj is a religious festival where the pilgrims of all walks of life come together and pray for world peace. The message of equality and unity that they send to the world is important to all nations. Muslims in Sri Lanka also celebrated the Hajj festival, gathering at religious sites.
The commission appointed to rectify salary anomalies within the government service has been gazetted under the order of President Maithripala Sirisena. S. Ranuge is appointed as the chairman of the 15-member commission. With that, let's take a look at other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
The excavation work of the mass grave discovered at the old CW building in Mannar resumed yesterday under the supervision of Judicial Medical Officer of Mannar, Dr. S. Rajapaksha. He stated that among the skeletal remains of 66 persons that have been unearthed so far, 40 have been removed through excavations. The investigations led by the officers of the Department of Archaeology, government analysts, judicial medical officers and Mannar police officers have been underway for 56 days at the location. 3 persons who were hunting wild animals were arrested by the Galgamu police. The illegal hunters had preyed on wild animals attracted to waterholes during the drought. A firearm, live ammunition and other equipment utilised in the hunts are taken into custody. Police said 2 suspects absconded and operations are underway to arrest them. 8 Indian fishermen who were arrested by the Navy yesterday are remanded until the 3rd of September. They were arrested for violating the Sri Lankan maritime boundary line off the coast of Kadiramale in Kalpitiya. Navy spokesperson Commander Dinesh Bandara said that the arrested were handed over to Puttlam police and the suspects have been produced before the district magistrate of Puttlam.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Business news now. State Minister of National Policies and Economic Affairs insists that the free trade agreement Sri Lanka entered into with Singapore does not take away the right to transboundary movement of hazardous waste. Speaking at a media briefing held in Colombo today, Dr. Harsha De Silva rejected suggestions that waste import and exports of Sri Lanka is in any way infringed upon. Meanwhile, speaking at the same media briefing, State Minister of Finance Aran Wickramaratne touched on the new features of the loan scheme provided under the Enterprise Sri Lanka.
If there is any graduate with a good business plan, he can go to any bank and have an interest-free loan up to 1.5 million rupees. The bank will have an interest, but the government will pay it. There is another loan scheme called Riya Shakti, under which the government will pay 75% of the loan granted when buying a new vehicle. Under these schemes, the government will take the risk of not calling for deeds and guarantors.
අපේ තියෙනවා general exceptions and security exceptions කියලා එකක්. ඒක inconsistent with the GATT 1994 and have thus protected Sri Lanka's right to protect human, animal or plant life or health. Article 20B of GATT 1994. එතකොට දැන් අපිට ඕන වෙලාවක මේ general exceptions එක invoke කරන්න පුළුවන්. We have not taken away Sri Lanka's right under the Basel Convention on control of transboundary movement of hazardous waste. These existing rights are protected under Article 17.4 of the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. So this is, I think, we are trying to take a small piece of this thing and try to, make a, mountain of a molehill. But the fact is, these are, just general text that applies across the board. Under this agreement, we have protected our rights, and this transboundary movement of hazardous waste cannot take place.
In international business, the S&P 500 share index, which tracks the 500 biggest public companies in America, is poised for a new record. By the end of trade, the benchmark index is said to have gone 3,453 days without a fall of 20% or more, making the longest rally ever in U.S. history. The positive run dates to the 9th of March in 2009, when the world was reeling from the financial crisis. Overall, the index has risen almost 325% in the period, lifted by companies such as Apple, Microsoft and Amazon. This year, the gains have been shaken at times by worries about rising inflation, interest rates and trade disputes. Still, the S&P 500, the broadest measures of the U.S. market, remains up more than 1% so far this year. In international news, last-minute synchronized verdicts in courtrooms are rather common in Hollywood movies, and rarely do they manifest in real life. Yesterday, however, this was one such day for U.S. President Donald Trump. Within 2 minutes of each other, a federal courtroom in New York heard Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty to 8 charges concerning fraud and violating campaign finance laws. And in Alexandria in Virginia, a federal court found Donald Trump's one-time campaign manager, Paul Manafort, guilty on 8 counts of tax and banking fraud. This all happened as Trump flew to a rally in West Virginia.
As far as US President Donald Trump is concerned, it was a double whammy. 2 characters with links to Trump, former personal lawyer Michael Cohen and former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, both found themselves in hot water and far from grace yesterday. Trump's former personal lawyer Michael Cohen pleaded guilty in New York to campaign finance violations and other charges, saying he made payments to influence the 2016 election at the direction of a candidate for federal office. Adult film actress Stormy Daniels has said Cohen paid her $130,000 shortly before the November 2016 election to keep quiet about a 2006 sexual encounter with Trump. Cohen, one of Trump's closest associates for more than a decade, said he arranged to make payments for the principal purpose of influencing the election at the direction of a candidate for federal office. He did not, however, give the candidate's name. If that wasn't enough, Trump's former campaign chief, Paul Manafort, was found guilty of 8 of the 18 charges he faced in a case of bank and tax fraud. The judge in the case declared a mistrial on the 10 other counts. It was the first criminal trial arising from the Justice Department probe into alleged Russian election meddling, but none of the charges relate to collusion with Russia in the election. His former campaign chairman being found guilty of bank and tax fraud, and former personal lawyer admitting to finance violations, saying he made payments to influence the 2016 election, calls into question the US president's already murky path to the Oval Office. Trump tried to distance himself from former campaign chairman Paul Manafort's convictions, saying it did not involve him.
Doesn't involve me, but I still feel very badly for Paul Manafort. Again, he worked for Bob Dole, he worked for Ronald Reagan. He worked for many, many people, and the way it ends up. And it was not the original mission, believe me. It was something very much different. So, had nothing to do with Russian collusion. We continue the witch hunt. Thank you very much.
Also in international news, Facebook and Twitter say that they have suspended or removed accounts linked to Iran and Russia over inauthentic or manipulating behavior. According to founder and chief executive Mark Zuckerberg, more than 650 Facebook pages and groups were said to have been identified as misleading. Meanwhile, Twitter said that it suspended 284 accounts with apparent links to Iran. It comes a day after Microsoft said it had thwarted Russian cyber attacks against U.S. Lanka's conservative groups. Yesterday, Facebook said it had discovered multiple accounts that displayed inauthentic behavior linked to campaigns that originated in Iran and Russia following investigations that spanned many months. Although the investigation was still in progress, the social media network added that the campaign appeared to be targeting people across multiple internet services in the Middle East, Latin America, the UK and the US. Well, 10 government ministers in Australia have offered to resign following a failed bid to oust Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull as party leader. Turnbull narrowly won an internal party leadership vote on Tuesday, but is now likely to face a second challenge. He accepted the resignation of his challenger, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton, and one other minister.
Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull rejected the resignations of 8 cabinet members who backed a rival for leadership as he seeks to quell a renewed bid by a Conservative challenger. Turnbull survived a leadership bid from former Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton in a party room vote yesterday, but the narrow margin of his victory heightened speculation that his leadership days were numbered. Expectations that Turnbull would soon face another challenge, possibly within days, was stoked when 8 cabinet ministers backed Dutton. Australian Prime Minister told reporters today that he had unequivocal assurance of continuing loyalty and support from cabinet ministers. Turnbull is desperate to unite the fractured Liberal Party, the senior party in the government coalition. He asked the bulk of the cabinet rebels to remain in their posts. Dutton refused Turnbull's request to remain in cabinet, a move widely seen as a precursor to another challenge as he works to secure the 7 Liberal Party votes he needs to become Australia's 6th Prime Minister since 2009.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Time to take a look at your weather. Well, there is a possibility for afternoon thunder showers in northern, north-central, Ubon and eastern provinces during the next few days, particularly from tomorrow. Showers or thunder showers will occur at a few places in north-central, Ubon and eastern provinces and in the Mullaitivu district as well. Mainly fair weather will prevail elsewhere. With that, let's take a look at your city-by-city forecast. And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7. Versed at 9 will return tomorrow at the same time. Until then, have a good night. But before we wrap things up, we would like to take you around Colombo, the commercial capital of Sri Lanka. Colombo metropolitan area has a population of 5.6 million and is a busy and vibrant place with a mixture of modern life and colonial buildings and ruins. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.